never imagined that coming home would end with the front door slammed in my face, and my son just standing there, watching silently. I was holding my suitcase, still tagged from my trip to Arizona. I'd gone to visit my sister for the first time in years, hoping to rest and maybe heal a little. I thought I'd come back to my cozy kitchen, maybe find a bit of dust where that leaky faucet Jeremy never got around to fixing. But instead, I came home to find Tessa, my daughter-in-law, shutting the door right in front of me before I could even say hello. And behind her was Jeremy, not saying a word. I stared at that door, hoping it would open again if I just waited. It didn't. Jeremy? I called out, softly, not wanting to make a scene on the porch. I saw the curtain move. He was still there. I knew it. But he said nothing. Not even a fake excuse. That house, my house, wasn't just bricks and wood. It was the place I bought with my husband, the one I lost too soon to cancer. Every inch of it held memories. Jeremy took his first steps in that living room. I could still hear him giggling, pretending to be a race car zooming around the couch. And now, I was being treated like a stranger. Then Tessa's voice came through the door. Cold. We need space, Marion. You agreed to let us settle in. It's better if you stay with Lillian a bit longer. I froze. I never agreed to that. Jeremy? My voice cracked. What's going on? Still nothing. He didn't even have the courage to look me in the eye. I turned away, feeling every bit of my 71 years pressing down on me. My suitcase felt heavier with each step down the walkway. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stand there another second. That door didn't just close, it shut off a whole life, a whole history. The kind of silence that crushes your chest. The boy who once held my hand now stood behind a door while his wife erased me like I was something to be wiped clean. I got into a cab and told the driver to take me to Lillian's. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely text her that I was coming early. She didn't ask why. Lillian never asked dumb questions. She just opened the door, hugged me tight, and handed me a cup of tea so hot it burned my hand. I didn't care. At least it reminded me I could still feel something. Later that night, staring into my tea, I whispered, I left them a key to the house. I thought I could trust him. Lillian just sat with me, quiet and steady. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't have to. What do you call it when someone steals your home with a smile, and your own child helps them? You call it betrayal. You call it heartbreak. You call it a door slammed shut on everything you built with your bare hands. That night, lying on Lillian's couch, staring at her old popcorn ceiling, I made myself one promise. They may have shut me out, but they would regret thinking I wouldn't fight to get my life back. And the hardest part? Just 5 days before, I had been in my own kitchen, cradling my favorite chipped mug of chamomile tea. The steam curled up gently, just like always. The radio hummed low from the shelf. Everything felt normal, safe. I had no idea that across town, my son was in some office, handing over forged papers with my name on them. That morning had been too quiet. After breakfast, I noticed something strange. The folder I always kept hidden in the bottom drawer of my old desk, the one with the mortgage, the deed, the refinance documents, had been moved. Not missing. Just out of place. Some of the papers were bent. Others were shuffled around. I frowned and smoothed them out. But I didn't panic. Why would I? Jeremy had just been over the day before. He brought the kids, asked to use the printer. I even made him lunch. Mom, you make the best grilled cheese, he'd said with that shy smile. The one that used to melt me. The one that made me forgive the missed birthdays. The late phone calls. So when I saw the drawer slightly open, I just brushed it off. Told myself I was getting forgetful. I should have known better. Tessa was always dropping little hints, nothing loud, just those small, sneaky comments that make you question yourself. Maybe you should use a password manager, Marion? You forget things a lot. Or, are you sure you didn't misplace it? They were planting doubts in me, and I didn't even realize I was helping them grow. That day, I kept myself busy. Folded some laundry, planned dinner, even cleaned out part of the garage. I didn't go near the desk again. Why would I? I still believed, deep down, that my son would never do anything to hurt me. What I didn't know was that just a few hours earlier, Jeremy had already filed papers at the county office. A deed transfer. My name, forged. Signed, witnessed, and notarized, probably by one of Tessa's friends. They were already making plans to claim the house as theirs, and I was standing in the kitchen, sipping my tea, without a clue. It didn't feel real. I went to the bank like it was just another errand. I had my little red folder under one arm and a list of questions in my hand. All I wanted was a quick update on my mortgage balance. That's it. The teller smiled, typed a few things, then paused. And it was that pause, that long, strange silence, that made my stomach twist. She squinted at her screen like maybe she'd typed something wrong. Mrs. Callahan, she said slowly, it looks like the ownership of your property has already been transferred. I'm afraid we can't give you those documents anymore. I blinked. Excuse me? She turned the monitor toward me, trying to be helpful. But all I saw was my worst fear in black and white. Jeremy Callahan. New owner. Co-signer, Tessa Callahan. My name? Nowhere. My fingers went ice cold. My breath stopped halfway up my throat. That's not possible, I whispered. Her voice changed, gentler now, more cautious. Maybe you'd like to speak with someone in legal services. We can call someone if you have questions. No, I said, grabbing the edge of the counter to keep steady. This is my house. My husband and I, we bought it together. He passed away. I never signed anything. But even as I said it, the memories started clicking into place. The folder in the desk slightly moved. Jeremy asking to use the printer. Do you have your ID, Mom? I just need to fax something real quick. I'd handed it over. Without thinking. I want to talk to someone, I said, my voice barely holding together. She nodded, quietly called for someone named Alan, and I sat down in the lobby. The chair was cold. The floor was cold. The air blowing from above felt like it was trying to freeze the breath right out of me. They stole it. That truth hit me like a stack of bricks to the chest. My son faked my signature. His wife helped him. They planned the whole thing. I stared at the floor, then at the table in front of me. The glass was so clean I could see my reflection, but it didn't look like me. Just a woman who trusted too much. A woman who had just lost everything she built. What hurt the most wasn't even what happened next, it was the photo. A friend, someone I hadn't talked to in years, messaged me, Tessa's throwing a housewarming? Thought that was your place? I clicked the link, there she was. Tessa, in a bright red dress, drink in hand, standing in front of my fireplace, the same one I used to decorate every Christmas. The mantel was lined with trendy candles, cold and sterile. But just off to the side, barely visible, was a chest I hadn't even had time to pack. An old antique Thomas bought me in 1985 on our last trip before he got sick. I'd owned the chest for 37 years. And now it was just a prop in Tessa's Instagram post. I kept scrolling. Strangers. In my dining room. My floors. My walls. My life. One caption read, to new beginnings and family legacies. Dizzy # ours forever. Ours forever. They hadn't just taken my house, they were rewriting my whole story. I shut the app. My hands weren't shaking from anger, not yet. It was something deeper. That awful, hollow ache, like a crack in your spine. The kind of pain that dares you to keep walking like nothing's broken. I left the little borrowed apartment I'd been crashing in and headed straight to Ava's office. Ava, my best friend since high school, now a lawyer. She had already pulled the records. When I walked in, she didn't say anything at first. She just slid a manila folder across the table, looked me in the eye, and said, it's fraud. Ava tapped the paper and pointed to the signature. This isn't your handwriting. This isn't your notary. And this stamp? She gave a small shake of her head. Fake. The whole thing would fall apart under real scrutiny. I stared at the page, at my name twisted in slanted ink. It looked like me, but it wasn't. It was my identity, bent and stolen. Can we fight it? I asked quietly. My voice wasn't strong, but it carried hope. Ava didn't blink. She didn't smile either. She just nodded once and said, we will. Right then, the grief didn't vanish, but it shifted. It made space for something else. Something stronger. Maybe it was resolve. Maybe it was just the spark of anger I needed to stop feeling helpless. Back at Lillian's condo, things felt different. It was small and smelled like lemon polish and old quilts. Nothing fancy, but safe. Peaceful. The kind of place where silence didn't feel lonely, it felt like rest. She didn't ask for the whole story. She just opened the door, hugged me hard, and said, you're home here as long as you need. And that's when the tears finally came. Not the sobbing kind. Just slow, steady drops that slipped down my cheeks while I sat on her couch. I didn't even bother to wipe them away. I was good to him, I whispered, mostly to myself. He was just a boy when Thomas died. I did everything, I gave him everything. Lillian reached over and held my hand. I could still see Jeremy as a little kid, standing on a stool in the kitchen, trying to stir pancake batter. The same boy who'd crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who clung to me and cried on his first day of kindergarten. He used to call me his best friend. Now I was a problem. A threat. Maybe even an inconvenience to Tessa's tidy life. After Thomas passed, I went back to work just 3 weeks later, just to keep the house. I missed school plays. I missed birthdays. I skipped my own doctor appointments to make sure Jeremy had a home, a yard, a life. I painted the fence by hand. I laid every border stone in the garden myself. That house held more than memories, it held everything I had fought for. And now, they were drinking wine in my dining room like I had never existed. I don't want the house just for the bricks, I told Lillian softly. I want my name back. I want the truth to be on paper. You'll get it, she whispered, squeezing my hand. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the antique chest. Jeremy's empty stare. Tessa's smug little smile. They thought they were done with me. They didn't know me at all. The next morning, Ava called early. No greetings, no small talk. I need you to gather anything that shows your daily routine, mail, receipts, prescriptions, anything dated from before and after the deed transfer. I felt my stomach drop. Why? They're going to say. You're mentally unfit, she said. They already are. Later that day, I took the long bus ride through my old neighborhood. Everything looked the same sidewalks, same houses, same big willow tree on the corner. But it didn't feel the same. It was like walking through someone else's version of my life. That's when I saw Evelyn, my old neighbor, 2 houses down. She was watering her roses, like always. The second she saw me, she dropped the can and rushed over. Marion. I didn't know, you okay? They said you moved. I blinked. She looked nervous. Jeremy told the HOA you were having some cognitive issues. That you decided to downsize. Said it was safer for you. My jaw tightened. And Tessa's parents? Are they still there? Evelyn hesitated. They moved in the day after you left. She couldn't look me in the eye. Of course they did. That's when it all clicked. The party photos. The antique chest. The way everyone fell silent so quickly. This wasn't just theft, it was a cover-up. A clean wipe. Tessa hadn't just wanted me gone. She wanted me erased. She always hated the wedding photos I kept on the walls, I murmured. Evelyn gave a sad little nod. They're gone. I saw them throwing things into black trash bags the next morning. Something in me snapped. Not loudly. Not with a shout or a sob. Just a quiet, sharp break. The kind you don't tape back together. If Jeremy was telling people I was senile, then fine. We'd let the evidence speak. I would gather every receipt, every dated piece of paper, every trace of my normal life. One by one, Ava would stack those pieces like bricks. And together, we'd build a case so solid they'd have to face the truth. No more begging to be remembered. From now on, I would demand it. That evening, I found myself back at the church. I didn't really know why I came, maybe I was looking for comfort, or just something that hadn't been taken away from me. The place still smelled the same, warm wax, old wood, and a soft trace of lilies left over from Sunday service. I slipped into the last pew quietly, like my body wasn't there to pray but just to find some kind of shelter. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps. Then Pastor Doug's gentle voice, Marion. I turned to see him, and the moment he looked at my face, I could see the worry in his eyes. We've been concerned, he said as he knelt beside me. I've heard some things. Are you okay? I paused, then gave a small nod. Getting there. I didn't tell him everything, I didn't need to. From the look in his eyes, I could tell someone had filled him in just enough to make him worried, but not enough to turn him against me. I'm fighting back, I said quietly after a long silence. Through the courts. I never thought my own son would let it get this far. Pastor Doug sat down beside me, folding his hands over his knee. Kids aren't born selfish, he said. They learn it. I asked, not really expecting an answer, learn it from who? He didn't respond, just looked at me gently. Then he said something that nearly broke me. If you need someone to speak for you, about your independence, your memory, anything, for court, I will. I'll do it. It wasn't some grand gesture. It was simple. Honest. And it meant more to me than anything, because it was the first real offer of help I'd gotten in weeks. No strings, no judgment. Just kindness. I might need that, I whispered. He gave my hand a gentle pat, stood, and left me there. As the light from the stained glass window spilled across the pews in streaks of blue and gold, I just stared at it. This wasn't my first fight. I'd raised a child on my own. Paid off a house. Said goodbye to a husband. Fought cancer. Faced grief more times than I could count. I knew how to survive. But this time, I didn't just need to survive, I needed to win. Later, in Ava's office, everything felt fast and tense, like the air itself was hurrying. She had that serious look she gets when something big happens in a case, focused, all business. Tessa pressured him, she said, and the words hit like a punch. Then she slid a paper toward me. A coworker overheard a phone call. Tessa threatened to take the kids if he didn't put the house in their name. She said you were unstable. That if he didn't act, the old woman will leave us with nothing. I just stared at the paper, cold, hard proof that my son had let this happen? I always thought he was weak, I said quietly. But not cruel. Ava leaned closer. She manipulated him. Legally, it doesn't excuse him, but you need to know it wasn't all his idea. I nodded, slowly. Somehow, that made it worse. Because it meant he knew. He knew what was happening was wrong, and still, he chose her. He knew I was of sound mind. He'd seen me handle bills, take my meds, drive to doctor's appointments. Still, when it came down to it, he gave away everything. I'd built like it was an old jacket nobody wanted anymore. Will this help us? I asked. Ava didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Coercion strengthens the fraud case, especially when it's backed up by a fake signature and a forged notary. I closed my eyes, not in defeat, but with a strange sense of clarity. The lies were starting to unravel. And lies, I've learned, don't last long. They fall apart, little by little. I opened my eyes, looked right at Ava, and said, let's finish what they started. I didn't realize how small I'd been living, how quiet I'd become, like I thought staying invisible would keep me safe. Like shrinking myself might somehow make someone love me. But grief is honest. It doesn't lie or flatter or let you hide. So I started walking every morning, 2 miles around the neighborhood by Lillian's condo. Not for exercise or health. Just to feel like I was moving forward again. I started brushing my hair with more care, wore the nice coat I used to save for special days. I went to the library often, not really for books, but to see people, to feel noticed again. There was a woman there, Maya, a retired nurse who always smiled when I came in. At first, we just talked about the weather or overdue books. But with every visit, I felt more seen. One day, she looked at me and said, you carry yourself like someone who's been through a lot, but still standing. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, I believed her. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in days. Maybe I've just learned, the hard way, what doesn't work, I said. I had a new phone, a new email. Small things, maybe, but to me, they felt like armor. Like I was building myself back up, one little piece at a time. Ava noticed it too. One afternoon, while flipping through some paperwork, she glanced at me and said, you look different. I nodded. I feel different. This wasn't about getting revenge anymore. It was about taking up space again. Sitting tall. Speaking. Clearly. Not saying, sorry, just for existing. They had tried to erase me, but instead, I was showing up stronger than I'd been in years. And I wasn't done yet. At the courthouse, the clerk didn't even look surprised when we filed the fraud claim. Families do awful things, she said, stamping the paperwork like it was just another boring Tuesday. But to me, that paper meant everything. It was my name, real, true, and backed by proof. We walked out under cloudy skies. No rain, just that heavy kind of air that makes you stop and breathe. In the car, Ava handed me a copy of the filing. We didn't ask for an emergency injunction, she explained. Too risky. They'd get tipped off. But enforcement is scheduled for next Saturday. Saturday? I asked. She nodded. Tessa's big event. The party? I said. Yep. According to her company's website, it's a 5-year anniversary celebration for their firm. She's hosting it. At your house. Of course she was. Of course she'd invite real estate agents, local officials, and strangers dressed in suits, fill my living room with champagne and fake smiles. My silence hadn't made her feel guilty. My absence didn't bother her. But my presence, backed by the court, signed and sealed, that would. I didn't smile. Not yet. That would come later. For now, I just held that court notice in my lap like it was a flashlight in the dark. They're not going to see it coming, Ava said. I nodded. Good. Let them raise glasses in my stolen home. Let them toast under chandeliers they didn't earn. They had 7 days left. Then the lights would come on. The first call came at 8:12 a.m. unknown number. I let it ring. I already had their numbers blocked, but I knew exactly who it was. A voicemail popped up. Mom, it's Jeremy. Something weird's going on with the insurance. They flagged the deed, said it doesn't add up. Now the electric companies asking for new verification. I'm trying to fix it, okay? Just call me. I didn't. Not right away. The second call came around noon. Same number. This time, I picked up. Jeremy's voice was tight, like he was trying to sound calm but failing. Hey, Mom, listen, have you heard anything weird from the bank or anything? My voice stayed flat. No. Why? He paused. Our home insurance is panicking. They said they can't verify Tessa's name on anything. Then the utility company called. There's some mismatch with the owner's name, owner of record. I almost laughed. As if I wasn't the owner. As if they hadn't already stripped everything from me and tossed my name aside like garbage. That's strange, I said, keeping my tone cold. He went quiet. Then, softly, Mom, do you think you could help us out? Just temporarily. Like, float us $5,000? We're dealing with some cash flow issues. Cash flow issues. I let that sit in my mind. The words felt dirty in my mouth, like something I'd stepped in. He kept talking, rushing now, just until this clears up. You know we're good for it. I let the silence stretch. Let him feel it. Let me think about it, I finally said. A beat passed. He was waiting for a soft spot. Waiting for mercy. Okay, he said, voice low. Thanks, Mom. He hung up. No, I love you. Of course not. I stared at the phone for a long time. Ava had warned me, they'll feel it before they understand it. When the bills stop going through, when their names bounce off locked doors, when the house starts treating them like strangers, that's when reality hits. Jeremy didn't sound angry anymore. He sounded scared. Not of me. Not yet. But of what was coming. The house, the one they took from me, was pushing back. And now, insult on top of injury, he wanted me to pay to fix the mess. As if I owed him anything. As if taking everything I built wasn't already enough. This wasn't a family in crisis. It was a con falling apart. There was no we. There never had been. Just Jeremy scrambling. Tessa hiding behind him. And me, sitting quietly in Lillian's kitchen, holding on to truth like it was the only thing that still belonged to me. I sat in Lillian's kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of warm tea, watching sunlight slowly stretch across a window. That wasn't mine. I had told Jeremy, let me think about it, but really, I already knew the answer. It was no. And this time, it was staying no. Later, the court clerk's voice came through the speakerphone, flat and routine, like she was reading from a grocery list. But to me, every word felt sacred. Final ruling confirms the property deed was fraudulently transferred. Marion Callahan remains the legal and sole owner of the home at 812 Hearthstone Lane. I looked over at Ava. She didn't say anything, she didn't need to. I reached for the pen. The papers were already stacked neatly in front of me, 8 thick pages on heavy white paper, covered with stamps and official seals. Just looking at them made my stomach twist and settle all at once. These weren't just documents. They were the undoing of every cruel word, every lie, every moment I'd been made to feel invisible. Ava leaned forward. You sure you want to do this? I nodded. The sheriff's department will serve the eviction in person, she said. We'll time it with the party. They'll be out in 24 hours. The word eviction sat heavy in the air. I never imagined I'd be the one to serve one, especially not to my own son. Not to the woman he chose over me. Not to the people who threw parties in my living room and slept in my husband's bed, all while calling me crazy behind my back. But I didn't flinch. I didn't waver. I signed every page, steady, certain. And on the last line, I pressed down so hard my name left a mark on the paper underneath. Ava checked the signatures and snapped the folder shut with a final clip. It's done. I looked out her office window. Outside, the world moved like nothing had changed. Cars rolled through intersections. A woman pushed a stroller past the corner cafe. Life didn't stop for justice. But inside me, something that had been shaking for months finally stilled. I'm not angry, I said quietly. Ava gave me a look. Not in the way I thought I'd be, I added. I'm disappointed. I'm tired. But I'm not here to destroy them. She nodded slowly. You're here to take back what's yours. And to make sure they can't do it to anyone else. We spent the next hour going over details with the sheriff's department, timelines, notices, enforcement. Everything was quiet. Clean. Precise. Justice didn't shout. It waited. It watched. And then it showed up, right when your enemies thought they were safe, sipping wine in a house they thought they stole for good. Ava leaned back and crossed her arms. Next Saturday, they'll learn what a signature really means. I nodded. But I wasn't thinking about the house anymore. I was thinking about Jeremy. About the moment he'd open that envelope and realize he hadn't just lost the property, he'd lost me. And this time, he couldn't buy me back. I didn't knock. I walked right through the open gate, past the flower beds Thomas and I once planted, down the flagstone path we laid one summer, back when Jeremy still wore cartoon pajamas and never wanted to leave my side. A banner stretched across the front porch, Callahan and Green Realty, 5 years of excellence. Music poured from the house, too loud and fake, like cheap perfume. Lights were strung where my wind chimes used to hang. People stood around, laughing, sipping drinks, standing in a house they didn't even know wasn't theirs. I wore gray, not black, not red. Just a calm, strong gray. The kind of color that doesn't shout but also doesn't fade into the background. Beside me, 2 deputies and a court officer walked in step. None of us said a word. We didn't need to. The sealed court papers they carried were louder than any speech I could have made. I didn't stop to look around. I didn't search for reactions. I looked for one person. Jeremy. He was near the buffet table, half laughing at something. A man in a blazer had said. A glass of white wine dangled from his hand. Tessa stood beside him, turned slightly away, wearing a shiny champagne-colored dress that sparkled under the lights like she thought it made her untouchable. I walked into the crowd. Conversation slowed, not quite stopping, just tripping over. The sight of me, like someone seeing a ghost. Jeremy saw me first. And for a split second, I saw something I hadn't seen in his face since he was a little boy, raw, real fear. "Mom," he breathed. I didn't stop. Didn't hesitate. I kept walking. I opened my purse and pulled out the sealed envelope, the court order, and handed it to him. "This is for you," I said, steady and calm like a quiet winter morning. He didn't reach for it. Just stared at it, like it might bite him. One of the deputies gently pressed it against his chest until, without thinking, he took it. Then Tessa's voice rang out over the music, sharp and showy as always. "What is this? What the hell is she doing here?" she snapped. I turned to the hosts, a couple in their 50s, both trying too hard to look important with tiny house-shaped cufflinks, and handed them another envelope, this one stamped with the county seal. "This is a legal notice," I told them, soft but clear. "This house was never legally signed over. The deed was faked. It's still mine." They looked stunned, mouths open, no words coming out. Then the court officer stepped forward. His voice was steady but firm. "This gathering is now considered an illegal occupancy. You have 24 hours to leave. The court has ordered this property to be returned immediately." Everything froze. Tessa's parents stopped mid-toast. Someone dropped a glass. A man in the back coughed and quietly stepped away like he wanted to vanish into the wall. Tessa's fake smile cracked. She lunged toward me, furious. "You crazy old," but the deputy blocked her with a calm arm and said, "Ma'am, don't escalate." Jeremy, his hands shaking, opened the folder and read the front page. I could see his lips moving. "Final restitution order. Hearthstone. Property, fraud case." His voice was barely a whisper. "This is a mistake." The officer didn't even look at him. He looked at me. "Miss Callahan," he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, "do you need the police to enforce this order?" I locked eyes with Jeremy and said, clear as day, "Yes." The room gasped. Not polite party gasps, real, shocked ones. The kind that come when people see something they can't unsee. Tessa spun around, desperate. "You can't do this. We live here. This is harassment. Jeremy, say something." But Jeremy just stood there, frozen, still holding the folder like it had turned to stone in his hands. The guests started gathering their coats, whispering things they didn't mean. They weren't sorry about what had happened, they were just sorry they got caught in the middle of it. And I stood there, right in the middle of everything, the woman they tried to erase. The woman they thought they could ride over with party lights and cheap wine. But I didn't move. Tessa didn't just lose it, she came apart at the seams. "This is insane," she shouted, trying to shove past the deputy. "She's lying. She faked the papers. This is elder abuse." The deputy stayed calm. That calmness scared her more than if he'd yelled. "Step back, ma'am," he said firmly. She turned to Jeremy, wild-eyed. "Say something. Do something." But he couldn't. He just stared at the pages like they were in a language he'd never seen. The court officer raised a hand and the room fell quiet, like someone had sucked all the sound out of it. He read from the court order, "This property is returned to Mary and Elaine Callahan as the legal owner. The previous deed, filed in April, was proven to be fraudulent. Signatures were forged. Notary documents were faked." Tessa's dad slowly set down his drink with a tiny clink, like he'd just given up. Her mom looked at me like I was a ghost. I almost asked them, was it worth it? All this lying and stealing, was it worth one fancy night and a few trays of hors d'oeuvres? But I said nothing. The truth was already loud enough. Tessa let out a choking sob, snatched the folder from Jeremy, and started ripping through the pages like she could tear up reality with her perfect nails. "This is garbage," she screamed. "My lawyer will crush this. She doesn't even have a job." The court officer didn't blink. He just pulled out a second copy from his briefcase, held it up, and let the official seal catch the light. It gleamed like a warning shot. Tessa stared at it, speechless, as the pages in her hands fluttered to the floor. The papers fell around Tessa's feet like dry leaves in the wind. I turned to Jeremy. His eyes finally met mine, and for a moment, I saw someone I hadn't seen in years, the little boy he used to be, before greed, before excuses, before he started choosing comfort over doing what was right. "I didn't think you'd go through with it," he whispered. I almost smiled, but I didn't. "You never thought I'd stop letting you walk all over me," I said instead. He looked away, too ashamed to say anything else. People were leaving now, quietly, awkwardly. A few gave me small nods, the kind people give when they realize too late they've been standing on the wrong side of something. The court officer closed his folder. "We'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. to confirm the house is empty," he said. Tessa turned to me, her voice sharp again. "You'll regret this. You think you've won." But the deputy raised a calm hand and said, "Ma'am, you're trespassing." That shut her up. I stood on the porch watching everyone scatter. Jeremy slowly sat down on the steps like a man watching his whole life burn to the ground, because, in a way, that's exactly what was happening. But the fire wasn't mine. It was his. Just then, one of the deputies stepped closer and spoke softly so only I could hear. "Miss Callahan, do you want to press criminal charges?" I knew what he meant: fraud, forgery, manipulation. Real crimes. Real prison time. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I wanted to feel the weight of the choice. I looked at them, Tessa flipping through court papers like the words might change if she stared. Long enough, Jeremy hunched over, eyes locked on his lap like he'd lost everything. And maybe he had. They looked smaller now. Not scary. Not powerful. Just sad. I took a breath and gave my answer. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Let them live with what they've done." The deputy nodded. I added, quieter this time, "I don't need bars to make them small." And I meant it. I wasn't here for revenge, I was here for peace. Let the neighbors talk. Let the story spread. Let every person who toasted in that house remember the woman who walked in with the law at her back and didn't raise her voice once. Tessa would spend every holiday wondering who still respected her. Jeremy would stay up late wondering why. The mother who once begged for his love had finally gone quiet. And me? I'd sleep, really sleep, for the first time in years. The court officer nodded one last time, then started helping the deputies clear the house. Guests were still trickling out, heads down, voices low. Jeremy hadn't moved. He just sat there, still and small. I walked up, not too close, just enough. When he looked at me, I didn't see my son anymore. I saw a man who bet on me staying silent, and lost. "I would have given you anything," I said softly. "All you had to do was ask. But you stole it. And now, you can never have it back." He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to lie. I didn't wait to find out. I turned and walked down the porch steps. My heels clicked gently on the stone, steady and certain. I didn't look back. Behind me, the law was wrapping things up. In front of me, the rest of my life was waiting, not as a victim, not as a mother desperate for her son's love, but as a woman who finally remembered her voice. And used it. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in AA's car across the street, engine off, windows slightly open. From there, I could see the whole scene: the porch, the sheriff's car, the flickering porch light I used to replace every winter. Even that light looked tired now, like the house itself was done waiting. Jeremy and Tessa had 24 hours to leave. They didn't even last 12. Maybe it was the shame. Maybe it was the fear of another scene. Or maybe, just maybe, they finally realized they couldn't twist this into some tragic little story. There was no way to pretend this had ever been anything but what it was. They packed quickly, and badly. You could tell they were in a rush, like they just wanted to get out before anyone else saw too much. Ava and I sat and watched it all from the car, like we were watching a play that didn't know if it was supposed to be funny or tragic. Boxes without lids, clothes shoved into trash bags, two guys from Tessa's law firm awkwardly loading furniture into a rented van without looking at anyone. A sheriff's deputy stood near the front steps, arms crossed, not mad, not smug, just there to make sure the law stayed the loudest voice on the property. A few neighbors popped out onto their lawns, pretending to water plants or grab the trash bins, but they weren't fooling anyone. Their eyes stayed on the house. And the fact that they didn't say anything? That silence hit harder than gossip ever could. Jeremy was the slowest of them all, like he couldn't quite believe this was real. He carried out an old wooden chest, the antique one that used to be mine. The one Thomas gave me. The one Tessa used to show off in pictures like it had always been hers. Jeremy set it down at the curb and just stood there, staring at it. I didn't wave. I didn't roll down the window. I just let the moment be. His shoulders started shaking. He was crying, not for me, not for what he'd done, but for the comfort he lost. For the easy life that came with pretending family was about control instead of love. Tessa came out next, dragging a suitcase with a busted wheel. Her hair was pulled back tight, her face drawn like she hadn't slept. She glanced at the car once. Just once. I didn't blink. I didn't move. She looked away. The sheriff gave Ava a small nod. "Property's clear," he said. Ava nodded back, then turned to me. "You ready?" I shook my head. "Not yet." She didn't push. Just started the car, turned on the heat, and waited. Jeremy sat down hard on the curb, head in his hands. Next to a box labeled family photos. I wondered what pictures made the cut. What parts of me he tried to keep, not realizing those memories weren't his to take anymore. Behind them, the house stood still and quiet, like it was holding its breath. I wasn't going in yet. Not while they were still there. Not while the air still felt heavy with their shame. I'd wait, until the house felt empty in the right way. Until the keys were mine again and the silence didn't carry their noise. Until everything inside had taken one deep, clean breath. So I sat there, in Ava's car, under a dark sky dotted with tired streetlights, and listened to the quiet sounds of a man losing everything, not with a bang, but with a kind of slow, public crumbling. And I didn't look away. Later, when I finally walked back up to the door, the lock clicked just the way I remembered, soft and sure, like the house was saying, "You're home now. Take your time." It was just past dawn. No deputies. No neighbors. No Jeremy. No ghosts. Just me. And this time, the silence wasn't cold or crushing. It felt sacred.